after this presentation. So he's going to be recording this in case it goes really fast. We can always refer to it later. And I will just turn it over to Isaac.
Thank you, Beth. And thanks for everybody being here. This is awesome to see so many people. So just an overview for everybody over the next, few weeks here. Today I'll focus primarily on, trying to get people started with iMovie. I'll give everybody an orientation on that. And along the way, if you ever have questions or anything like that, you can always put stuff in the chat. I'll keep an eye on it as best I can. But like I said, I really want to emphasize that this will sort of be a jumping off point. I can't obviously cover everything that everybody needs to know about iMovie or about video or about recording it, but hopefully I can get you up to speed at least to kind of get started, and then, get to a point where you can record something, put something out in the world, and feel confident that when you sit down with the software, you're not going to be completely lost. So today, like Beth said, focus is going to be on iMovie. Next week, if any of you are interested in coming multiple days, we'll be focusing on a open source software called Shotcut that's free, that we had one of our own faculty members use to make a great virtual ensemble. And then the last week we'll primarily focus on little details that you might feel missing from these first 2 weeks if you decide to show up to all of them. Things like video format, audio quality, video quality, more details in terms of sharing and how things like video compression work and little things like that, as well as sort of collaboration online, like talking about latency, good software for approaching that type of stuff. So anyways, first question that I need to know, if anybody in the chat has or wouldn't mind putting this down. Is anybody here, was anybody here hoping to learn the mobile version of iMovie over the desktop version? Because it's easy enough for me to add it in, but I just wanted to check in. If anybody was hoping for that, please just type in the chat that you were. But otherwise, the focus will be on the desktop version. I use the mobile version. Yes, please. I don't have the desktop. Okay, cool. So I'll just do a little bit of both. It's really no big deal. Let me just get my cable. So I'll start right off the bat with kind of going over how to get the software for those who don't know. So first things first, let me share my screen. I'm gonna have to do a couple of things because my phone is trying to connect. So if you don't know how, on Mac, you should have, I have a slew of things down here, but you should have an App Store icon somewhere down here. By default, I removed mine. But if you go into your Finder and into Applications, towards the top, you should have something called App Store. All you need to do is go into there, and you'll be presented with this. You can, over here, just search for iMovie, and then it should be the first result once it loads for me. One thing is, if you are like me and aren't currently updating your older device, and if you have a hard time finding iMovie, or if, for example, you don't want to update, and when you try to hit the download button, it'll say your current version isn't compatible or something like that. One way to still get the older version, basically the most recent version that's compatible with your device, is to go down here at the bottom left to the App Store, click your name, and that'll bring you to your purchases. And then all you have to do is just go find iMovie wherever it is. Mine happened to be down here. And what will happen is you'll have the same download button like you would normally expect, like these here, anywhere around here. You'll click that, and then what it will say is essentially, your current, you know, iOS or a version of the software that you're running isn't compatible with the newest version. Would you like to download an older version? And all you have to do is click yes, and it'll download the most recently compatible version for you. So thought that might be important to know. And then let me really quick just jump over to the mobile version. So the process is pretty similar over here. You just need to go into your app store. You'll know where that is on your phone. If you don't, you can always search for it like this. I pulled down on my iPhone screen. And then you can also, for newer devices, you can go to your app library by swiping to the right-hand side. You can find it there by going to App Store. And then up here, as usual, you're just going to want to search for iMovie, and it'll be the first one to come up. This should be the same process if you're on an older device or you aren't updating currently. Normally, it should just download the most recent version right away. If you have issues, you can always go to the homepage and find your purchases by tapping the little icon of my face. Looks all messed up because it's an old image that got converted to the new iOS, so it's like black. But at the top right corner of the home screen that you get when iOS comes up, you can tap that and that'll pull up a card that then you can go to purchased, go to your own purchases, and then you can find it in there. This is assuming that it should just download the older version regardless, just by searching for it on the phone. One thing I'll do now, just to show how it works, for those of you who are going to be primarily on the phone version, you're going to want to occasionally AirPlay things. I'm going to do that so that I can have some video on my screen sharing is paused. I'm going to do that so that I can have some video on my phone that we can use, so I can show you some of this stuff over there. So if I show you here, I'm in Finder right now, for those of you who don't know how to do this. And if I want to get to AirPlay, sometimes AirDrop is what I meant, not AirPlay. AirDrop, sometimes it doesn't show up here on the left-hand side of your Finder if you're trying to find it. And if that's the case, all you have to do is go up to the top of the Finder window and click Go. And then that will be down here if you're looking for that type of thing.
To use AirDrop, does the person have to also like be signed up for an account, or can you?
No, so AirDrop is built into iOS devices. This is definitely one thing I suppose that I didn't run by people, but I guess I assumed it was maybe implied. But iMovie is an iOS and OS X only, so it's a Mac only application. So AirDrop is just a built-in feature of iPhones and Macs, basically. So you can transfer. So if you have an Android phone, for example, you wouldn't be able to use the mobile version of iMovie anyways. But you couldn't. You can AirDrop with certain third-party stuff, but in general, I'm just talking about the basically the iPhone process of this. So yeah, it's built in. All you have to do is turn on your Bluetooth, and then on iOS devices, it will look like this. Make sure I'm actually showing what I think I'm showing. There it goes. If you use an iOS device, you'll be familiar with this screen. If you're not familiar, I'll show you another way to do it. But on the newer phones, if you swipe down from the top right-hand corner on the newer phones that don't have a button, or on the older phones that do have a button, you swipe up from the bottom from where the button is, and this will open. And then this top left region that has the airplane the kind of like wire, the Wi-Fi symbol, and then the Bluetooth symbol. You just tap and hold on that, and that will expand, and then you can see this AirDrop button. And all you have to do is tap that, and then contacts only sometimes works if you're doing it with your own devices, but usually it's good enough to just tap everyone, and so enable it so everything that you're using can see. And then I'm gonna share my laptop screen again. So now you can see there's my messed up picture. But you can see that there. And then whatever I want to transfer over, I just go find that now. So this is in one of my folders, some videos that I have. All you have to do now is just drag whatever you want into there onto the symbol for your particular phone. So I can go ahead and just drag that there, drop that, and then see if I can catch this as it's going. But on the phone, all that happens is it'll say that. If you do it the other way around, which you can do, it looks slightly different, but it's, I can show you here if I open up my folders. So yeah, say for example, this opened automatically what I just transferred over. These are the 3 videos. If I wanted to do the reverse operation, hit share like you normally would to share to somebody. At the bottom left-hand corner, there's that share symbol, the square with the arrow going up. You can tap that, and that'll show you the share menu. And as long as your AirDrop is on, like we showed before, by going to the Finder and going up to Go, and then going to AirDrop, or trying to find it on the left of the Finder window, hopefully this will show up. Basically, it says MacBook Pro there. On older phones, I'm not sure if that, on older versions of iOS, I should say, I'm not sure if that symbol shows up, but AirDrop for sure will down there, that one. So if I tap that, then it'll like show me a list of stuff basically. And then all I have to do is tap whatever device I want to send it to. So kind of the reverse process there. So that all being said, let's hop over to iMovie, and we'll just start with the desktop version.
Isaac, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely, anytime.
When you AirDrop from your phone onto your computer, will it take it off of your phone? I'm
No.
running out of space on my phone with some of my videos,
right?
So it doesn't take it off.
Yeah, no, it won't take it off. It will just copy it over basically. But that being said, once it's copied, that's essentially what AirDrop's doing, right? It's copying the file from one device onto another. And once you go through with that, you could, if you were like doing that to clear up space or something like that, like for example, I could, select, oh wait, no, you can't see my iPhone screen. Let me swap that over really quick. So for example, I could select a bunch of different things on my phone that I maybe wanted to get off like this. I could just go whatever, pictures of my cat, and then I can do as many as I want. And then again, same thing, hit the share button and then go to the AirDrop. And then I could proceed to delete these if I really wanted to, if that was something that I was interested in doing that way. But up until then, they'll stay on your phone, basically. Okay. So now that we're switching gears, does anybody have any other questions about kind of the AirDrop or like that type of idea of kind of throwing files around or downloading iMovie or getting it?
Well, how is AirDrop better, worse, different, same than like a Dropbox?
So the big thing is that basically AirDrop relies on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So, it's really good if also who you're working with, you all have iOS devices. It's really good if, here, I'll just pin myself. It's good if you are in close proximity to the other person. It's really, really fast that way because it only goes over a local network. So if I'm right next to you and I'm like, hey, do you have this thing? We both have iOS devices. I can throw you that pretty fast, and I don't need a bunch of links or a bunch of upload time or anything. It's just pretty much instant. But in the case that I don't have those things, or I need to do long distance or anything like that, that would be a situation where you would want to use Dropbox or Google Drive or WeTransfer or anything like that. And we can cover more of that. We'll cover more of that stuff towards the end. But yeah, that would hopefully be the difference. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions? And feel free to put stuff in the chat too, because I am keeping an eye down there. Okay, cool. So let me share my screen again, and then we'll talk about iMovie on the desktop. So once you download it, once again, it'll be in your applications, and also your computer should add it to this bottom row here. Once you get it, I don't have it down there because mine's already super cluttered. But it'll be in your applications, and you'll just double click that as usual, like you normally would, and open it up. And when you open it up, you'll see this screen. Let me just hide my meeting controls so I can kind of see better. And all this is your projects and your media folders. The difference here is that basically iMovie operates on, well, actually, so iMovie and as well as their upgraded version, Final Cut, operate on a media and a project sort of directory system. So I can load all sorts of different kinds of media from my projects or from my computer into here ahead of time without necessarily needing to open up a project, and I can tweak it a little bit if that's something that I want to do. So for example, here at the top left-hand corner, you can see this little down arrow. So that's an import button. And so that'll let you browse your computer for stuff that you have. This already is, the files that I'm looking for, but if I didn't know where those were, I just kind of browse around to try to find those. You can also look at stuff that's on your phone if you have it plugged in. So this is all the different media from my phone. You can turn on the camera. I'm not sure if this will work, but hi, you can do that. And then, yeah, anyways, so you can browse stuff. So what I was looking for is on my desktop, and that's on the left-hand side here. So you can go ahead and look for that. Up at the top here, you can also browse a little bit. But anyways, so I'm looking for my lessons folder. Left-hand corner, you can do drop down like this, or you can double click to open it. So I'll just go find those. So these are the ones I'm looking for. So I'll just import one for now and then show you the more normal, more typical workflow. So all I do is click that, and then at the bottom, click import selected, or you can just double click it. And so like I said, all this is now is basically said, iMovie has looked at the file and read the file and now knows what it is. And now you can do sort of basic functions with it, like hover over it and scrub. Scrubbing is just looking at at certain points of the video. You can do basic editing in here, and we'll cover more of this later. You can do cropping, adjust the volume, filtering, all that kind of stuff in this little section. So you don't necessarily, if you have some files that you want to use in the future, you can always just import them into iMovie without necessarily having to create a video. So, but like I said, when you open, normally you'll be presented with this screen. This is the projects view. This is how you create something in iMovie. So from here, all you have to do, like it says, pretty intuitive, is click create new. And this is the same as in the iPhone as well. So when you open up the iPhone version, you'll see let me just pull that up actually just to show. You will see a projects. Like I said, it looks exactly the same on the phone. I'm just loading that up. This is what it looks like. The difference here is obviously you don't import media because it's already on your device, and with the way that iPhones work, everything is sort of cohesive, so you don't have to import stuff. But in either case, you're going to tap the plus button and you'll be presented with either a movie or a trailer. Like it says on the trailer, it's a sort of Hollywood style movie trailer. What this is basically just a template with some transitions and some titles and stuff like that for you if that's something you feel like making that feels like sort of a trailer. But in general, you're just going to tap the movie one or select the movie one, regardless of where you're working. And on the phone, this is where you'll say, okay, I want these, or I want whatever different files that I'd like to use. You can always put more in later, but basically that's where you do that. And now what it's done on the phone, since I did that, is put them sequentially. So it's assumed that I wanted them as sequential clips. So if I kind of scrub through now, there's the second one that I have, and then if I get all the way to the end of this one by just swiping, I get into the next one. I'll go back over to the desktop just to show how that's different. So again, we have our create new, same thing, trailer and movie. You can pick one. We're gonna make a movie, and now, as you can see, what I had imported earlier is already here, but some of the other stuff that I might want for this particular project isn't here yet. So the way that works, sorry, hiding my meeting controls, is now, just like in the other screen before we made the project, I can go up to the top here to this down arrow. That's the import button. If you haven't imported anything yet, it'll basically have a big down arrow here. And it's basically telling you that you haven't imported any media yet. So I can click that, and it'll bring up the exact same menu as before. And it's defaulting to where I last looked. So if you have a folder that you've already put a bunch of files in, it'll kind of take you over that way. So I want the rest of these videos. For those of you who don't know, you can see that I have a gap between these, and let's say I want to import both of these, but I already have this one in the middle that I don't want to import again. I could, some of you might know that you can hit shift and then click, and that will highlight in a row basically. So if I go from the bottom up, that'll highlight everything in between those two clicks. But if I want to only do these two, I can hit command and click, and that will select multiple that way. So I can import a lot really fast that way, and I can kind of jump around. So if I had a huge list of files, all sorts of different cuts that I made for some reason, or all sorts of different recordings that I'd like to work with, I can do it that way super fast without having to go back every single time. So at that point, again, I'm just going to click import selected at the bottom, and that'll bring in those files. So they're there now. And again, just like in the other video, now I can click these, I can scrub through them, I can look around at them, and then I can tweak them at the top. So now getting into making the movie and kind of the basic features. On the desktop version, you can there's two ways to put your movie on the timeline. Actually, you know what? Running back a little bit, let me just give you sort of an idea of what different sections you're looking at here. So the whole screen is divided into 3 different windows. This upper left window here, this upper right window here, and then down at the bottom, another window. So the differences there are, the top left window is your library, basically containing all of your media that you've imported. The top right window is your preview screen as well as your editing screen for as far as editing the colors, the cropping, the audio, that type of stuff of the video. And then the bottom is your timeline. The timeline is the most important part because that's where you're going to drop videos and put them in order and add audio to your video or add subtitles or add whatever. So this is like the main workspace down here, but these are basically helping you kind of at the top kind of work with your material. So let's say that I have this video. I can click and drag that in that way. I can also hover over click and hover over, and you can see this plus button. And if I click that, that'll automatically drop it in order. So kind of like before with the movie, or with, the iOS version, the mobile version, by clicking this sort of works like that. So now you can see that place it at the end. So if I have a bunch of stuff that's I know is going to be sequential and I don't feel like clicking it, adding it in that way, or if I know they're going to be sequential, if I don't feel like dragging them, and I should say, I can do that super easily with that button. But in general, clicking and dragging is probably the most intuitive way, and probably the way that you'll do it the most, because it gives you access to some other functions of the timeline and some other functions of just video editing in general. So let's say we have a teaching video that we recorded. This particular video, all three of these videos I took off of YouTube, but this particular video, you can see it looks a little bit like Zoom because it was recorded in Zoom. So this leads me to talk about kind of some really basic things as far as recording. And so I will pause here really quickly just to ask if anybody has any questions up until this point. At this point, for the importing of files, kind of getting around the menu, any questions so far?
Well, I was curious, and maybe you're going to talk about this later, but I've found that do you recommend using iMovie to record directly, to create the file in iMovie, or to record it somewhere else and import it? Because I found that when I would go to create new project, I always had to click on the arrow in order to get the FaceTime camera up. And I was wondering if there was another way around that.
Right. So I'll answer that. I just noticed I have a question in the chat as well, really quick. When you import media, they're asking, when I import media, does it create a new file on my computer? Does it reach the file already on my laptop? Concerned about adding too many large files. So the answer to that question is it doesn't create a new file, though it will create essentially a companion file that should be pretty small on your computer that basically helps iMovie to know what to do with that file in the future, or basically tells iMovie certain features about the file so that it can handle it in the future without having to reanalyze it every single time. But that would be really lightweight, so it'd be pretty small. So the imported section is different. It's basically just a reflection of the files already on your computer. So then to answer the question about recording in iMovie, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think on the phone, it's better in comparison, simply because it's basically attached to the camera app on your phone. So it's a bit more workable, if that makes sense. I would see the recording in iMovie as supplemental, if that makes sense. If I was working on something and I realized, oh shoot, I could really use a voiceover here. Or, oh shoot, it would be really good if I don't know, if I had a little thing in the middle where I was just talking about what I did or something. And I just realized that all of a sudden, because you're not going to get a whole lot of control out of it. Plus, the laptop camera is, only so good. I mean, you could do lots with it, but basically, iMovie isn't really a recording environment. It works okay, but I would say if you have a phone or if you have some kind of camera, it would always be better to try to record externally and then import that. You can also, use stuff like your if you're on if you have a Mac computer, using something like Photo Booth or something where you can basically save your video as a separate file. That just makes it kind of easier to work with, and then will give you just a little bit more control over using it as a camera, basically. And then I'll get into that a little bit more when I start talking about some ideas for recording here. Somebody else asked, I can access my iPhoto library from iMovie, but it often doesn't update with my latest videos. Can you tell me how to update? With the iPhoto library, if it's not updating, I would just try to do the import function, and then if it's still not updating, it's probably more of a tech issue. But I would suggest you try just closing and reopening iMovie if you have it open and then you're putting more stuff in, or just restarting the computer so that it can recache some of those new files, basically. Because most likely what's happening is the iPhoto library hasn't updated the cache on the system. So when iMovie tries to look for the description of what's in it, because it can't actually see what's in it directly like you can with the user interface, it has to check with the system and ask what's in there. And if the system hasn't updated yet, that would be why. But if you're having more issues, I would just suggest, if it's like a super technical thing, you can always email me, but it's always a good idea to just contact Apple support, basically, with certain things like that are more system oriented or computer oriented. That would be my suggestion. Just try restarting everything, because it's most likely that it just hasn't read it yet and collected all that information for iMovie to read yet.
Thank you. Yeah, I have tried some of those other things, so maybe I'll try calling Apple support.
Yeah, because it can also be a storage issue. It can be a lot of things when it comes to cache files. So
thank you.
Yep. Okay, so
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
This is Kamini. If you import, say somebody sends you a video that's like 2.5 hours long, and you import into iMovie, does that take any longer time to upload, or is it as simple as importing a 1 or 2 minute video?
It would most likely take a little bit longer to use the import menu to import that file. I mean, in all likelihood, it probably shouldn't take, an hour or 30 minutes or something like that. But it may, instead of taking a minute, depending on your device, it may take a couple of minutes. Also, depending on the quality of the video. So if it's 1080p or even 4K, something super high quality, that can also take extra time. If it has a lot of audio, for example, embedded in it, anything like that, that can definitely take a little bit of extra time. But it shouldn't be anything super extreme, unless again you have an older device, which can sometimes make things take a bit longer.
Okay, and then once you have it imported into the timeline and you're, manipulating it, it should just function like a 1 minute video, right?
Again, it kind of depends, but in general, yes. Really, what the question is basically the quality of the file.
Okay.
So the higher the quality, the more difficult it's going to be for your computer to be able to update on the fly, especially as the length gets longer, if that makes sense. So basically,
Sure.
so yeah, if you're dealing with a 4K file and then it's 2 hours long, that's going to take a lot. It may be the case that if I'm going over this video now and I can see these short updates, as you can kind of see, it's not totally smooth, but also, it's pretty long. And if I zoom in, and I'll show you how to do that later, I can kind of see some updates here and there, but it's a little choppy, in the case that this is a 4K file that was 2 hours long, I would expect these updates to definitely be shorter, or take longer to update and not necessarily show me as high fidelity as quickly if it was a high quality file. Cool.
Thanks.
Yep. Great. Okay, so let's talk about really quick what I was going to say about recording, and then we'll get into the timeline and then the basic editing, which will then lead me to talk about sharing it. So you can see here, there's a lot of different ways that you can record something into iMovie. We kind of talked a bit about it there with one of the questions. But like I said, in general, I really think it's a good idea because, again, we're sort of talking about this from the lens of teaching music and just music in general. iMovie is only going to give you so much flexibility, and particularly if what you're interested in working with is music, and especially if you want to go to the extent of, recording high quality audio, or doing like a performance video or something for a lesson or anything like that, it would always be better to try to opt for something a bit external, so then you can control some of those other variables. But if that's all you have, then I would say feel free to kind of use the internal recorder. But again, it's really there as a more basic feature to just be able to get in a video without much hassle. One great way for teaching, as you can see here, is to use Zoom like we're doing right now. I'm recording myself, and so it's one thing to kind of record for posterity, but you can also do a recording in here to be able to show your screen kind of in the middle of stuff. As many of us know, probably, you can change your camera on the fly. I'm not sure if I can show those controls, but if you look at the bottom of your screen below your kind of the view of my share here, you can see the mute button and the stop video button. Right next to those, there are two arrows, and those let you change things like what microphone you're using, what camera you're using. So Zoom, that's to say, Zoom can be really, really flexible for a lot of that stuff. Really quick, somebody asked me a quick question. Do you have a recommendation for software to use to record multiple tracks with videos for each? Does Final Cut work for that? Yeah, Final Cut works great for that. Next week, we'll definitely, that's something that I'll be covering a little bit more, because Shotcut, it's not necessarily the most like intuitive program at the front, because it sort of has a bit of an older workflow. It was designed for Linux, but it's a free software that is fully featured, that can let you do that. I'll type it down the bottom just for everybody to see. This is what we'll be looking at next week. But so for Caitlin, direct message me about that. That could be something to check out if you'd like to get into something without any upfront cost. But yeah, Final Cut would work for that, like you were asking. Can I record my screen while watching a video on YouTube, for example, on iMovie? So you could that's why I was definitely suggesting Zoom. If you'd like kind of a full featured thing without much hassle in terms of kind of getting it up and running, to be able to do like a really complex lesson, and even high quality lesson, there's ways that you can make Zoom high quality that we will definitely talk about in the third week about collaborating online. That's why I'm suggesting Zoom, because all the things that you can do with Zoom already, like screen sharing and changing your video source, and listening, sharing audio, that kind of stuff. When you have record on, all of that stuff is going to be compiled in that one recording, and you'll have it all there. And if you feel like it, you can just simply import that one file into iMovie, and then that will let you kind of trim and cut that stuff out. If you had like little delays and you'd like to kind of trim those out, that'll let you kind of do that. So, but to answer your question more directly, you can't record your screen while watching a video with iMovie itself. But you definitely can do that by just using Zoom and hitting record and sharing your screen, like basically with nobody there in your personal room. Again, that's kind of that is exactly how this was made. So she just went into her personal room, hit record, and then did the usual stuff like sharing screen and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, to go back to the timeline now, and to just talk about some basic editing concepts, and then we'll also talk about the this preview editor here that lets you change some things about the actual video file you're working with, like filters, color, sound, and cropping. Some technical terms that could be useful to know, and then some orientation. So first of all, I keep saying cropping. So for those of you who don't know what cropping is, basically cropping is taking an image of some kind, an image file, or a video file, and changing the part that we see. So if this was our full video file, and this was the full screen recording, like how it came out of my phone or out of my camera or whatever, cropping would let me say I only want to be able to see from just the left side of this picture over to this guitar on the wall, and I only want to be able to see that stuff. So cropping will let me kind of do that. That's what cropping is basically. So a technical little term there. This thing that I'm moving around here with the white arrow in the timeline at the bottom here, that's referred to as the playhead. So I'm going to probably say that here and there. So that's the playhead. And again, it's just where play will begin if I hit play and want to see my video progress. Speaking of video progress for orientation over the timeline, there is, you know what? I've never actually thought to check, but I don't believe, let me see here, hiding my video, meeting controls. Yeah, so there's not actually, well, there's a play button over here that you can see here, but that's not actually playing my timeline. So there's no actual real play button in here. And for example, if I click this one now, if I hit play, that lets me see this preview. And actually that reminds me, let me start sharing sound with you. So anyways, that will let me hear and see what's in my preview window. But if I want this to see what my video is doing so far, all I have to do is hit spacebar. So that will begin to play my video. I just want to see here. Yep. So the other way to do it, which is way more awkward and cumbersome, is to go to the top of your screen where your settings are, click view, and then click play. But there's no reason to do that when all we have to do is hit spacebar. So as we can see, I'm clicking around here. That's moving the playhead around, and that's letting me, when I hit play, it'll play. The other orientation piece for the timeline down here is at the top right-hand corner, we can see this slider. So that will let me go to different zoom amounts. So I can see with more detail my video clip over time. So when I'm zoomed out this far, this file, if I go to see just how long it is, it's 11.5 minutes long. And we can see it at the, well, hold on, sorry. We can see that when I click on these, it says how long it is. So this one's 11.5 minutes long. So when I'm zoomed out like this, we know that just based on that little analysis that this whole square, this length of time is an entire 11.5 minutes. So that can be, if you're trying to edit something, that can be hard to find the right point that you want to start at or anything like that, trying to set your playhead or stuff like that. So if you're trying to do that, get a little more fidelity there, all you have to do is just drag this and that will let you kind of zoom in. So for those of you with laptops and a trackpad, to scrub around basically to be able to see the rest of the timeline, all you have to do is, just like if you're browsing a web page or anything like that, is use 2 fingers to kind of move around. It should be pretty natural if you do have a trackpad. You'll probably have done it quite a lot before. If you don't have one, so if you have like the older Mac mouse, I don't even remember what they're called anymore, but if you have a Magic Mouse, for example, that has a touch on it, that's wireless and Bluetooth, you'll be able to also do this move around like that. Otherwise, if you click anywhere with the playhead, that will focus your zoom. And this is also useful just in general. So if you zoom out and you kind of find in general where you want to look at, you can click and then you can use the slider here to zoom in once. And then you can get more detail. You can be like, okay, actually I wanted like right here. And then you can zoom in again. And then if you're like, okay, it's still kind of off, I can click here and then zoom in again. If you really need to get zoomed in, basically. So every time you zoom, it'll focus wherever your playhead is. Okay, and so the last thing about the timeline that could be useful is up at the top in the middle here of the timeline. You can see the point at which my playhead is at. So now it's at 3 minutes and 36 seconds. If I move it over here, now it's at 8 minutes and 26 seconds. And then /1132, that's just the total length of my video. So again, if I drag in something new, kind of put it at the end, now that number will increase. Now it's 13 minutes and 40 seconds instead of 11 minutes and 32 seconds. And then over here, you can see some project settings. Almost all of this stuff, it says settings over here. And it's the reason it's gray is because pretty much all of these things are predefined and stuff that you don't actually need to adjust typically after the fact. The reason for that is it's going to read the highest quality piece of video that you have and set a lot of these things for you, and it will do the job in general for what you need. And most of this stuff will be controlled kind of as you go with other functions. So yeah, just to point it out, but nothing to really worry about too much. So now into the kind of nitty gritty of the timeline. So again, you can zoom in any way you want. Also with a trackpad, you can pinch and spread your fingers out. Like if you were on an iPhone trying to zoom something, you can do that as well. But the primary functions that you're going to be using in here, I'm just going to go over them, will be trimming and then separating audio, most likely. So let me just move my video here. If I was going to want to trim this, let's say, I don't know, I have this part here where I'm looking at the screen share, and then now like at this point where I spent some time switching over with Zoom, telling it to stop screen sharing before I got started again. Let's say I wanted to cut that out. So she starts here.
You get the idea.
So let's say I wanted to cut that out. All I have to do, again, the playhead is sort of the main navigating part of the timeline. And so wherever I want to trim, I'm just going to find that with my mouse with this kind of line, and then find the point by just simply clicking somewhere and hitting play. And I can always stop when I'm ready to trim, so that'll be even easier to find. But I can also click to where I want to trim. So let's just say I'm doing it by hitting pause. So I know that this is nearby where I want to trim, so I'm just going to listen, and then when I get to the part where I'm like, okay, I want to cut there, I'm just going to hit spacebar again to pause it. So let's say it was right there. Now all I need to do is I can right click here. If I have a mouse with right click, if you have one of the older mouses that only has a left click, you can command click to do this. And then I can say trim to playhead. The other way to do that is to go up to the top. Gotta move my window around. Go to the top and go to modify here at the top, and I can say trim to playhead. Same thing. So I'll just do it from here because I think this is probably the most easy way to do it, is just right click where I want or what I want to trim, and then hit trim to playhead. Or I can say split clip. So split clip is going to cut it in the middle, so then I have both files. So split clip is probably the one you'll use the most often. So again, I have it at the playhead. I can hit split clip. And then I can just find the other part that I want by clicking around or whatever, all sorts of different ways you can do it. Find the part that I don't want and then hit split clip, and that'll create one here. And now all I have to do is I can right click it and just click delete or cut or whatever I feel like doing. or I can also hit like the delete key on my computer or the backspace key, just like if I was typing, and that'll delete it there. So that's the basics of that. Again, the big thing is just finding a spot that you know you want to click, that you know you want to split, and then just right clicking and hitting split clip. So one of the last things I'll cover is how to separate your audio. So for example, if you recorded audio with something other than your video, you can do that. If you right click your video here and you click detach audio, now that will create a green audio bar below it. And so now you can see that you can control things about the audio that way. Again, like all of this importing up here, if you had some audio, you can always import audio instead of video up here. In addition, you can use a video for its audio instead. So for example, again, if I had recorded with something else, or if I wanted like background music or something, I can take a different video like this piano video that I have, and I can drag that down below the video, and that will automatically turn it into audio. The green is audio. And so that I can drag that and set it wherever I want, basically. And you can do that with multiple clips as well. And that will be the last thing here, just to mention that you can put multiple video clips in if that's something that's useful to you. You can have multiple clips at a time, but just remember that only one can be playing at a time, but you'll hear all of the audio at the same time. So now you can see as I kind of go over from here, now all of a sudden this will start playing. So you can put multiple videos at a time. You can cut between stuff with audio. There's lots that you can do in here, but you won't always be using that. The main thing is just, you know, when you record one file, you can put it in here, and if you want some voiceover or anything like that, you can add that there. So really quickly, before we do sharing and some questions, I just wanted to point out, because somebody asked a specific question about subtitles. So there aren't real subtitles in iMovie, but basically you can do it. You just have to add a title. So at the top here, you can see all these different in your media library. At the top left, you can see these different tabs. One is audio, one is titles, one is backgrounds, and one is transitions. Under titles, that's basically where you would go if you wanted to create like a title over your video so that people could know what it was or anything like that. Or you can do like little information at the bottom that can like float away. There's one at the bottom called lower third, and there's one here called lower and one called upper. These ones basically don't do anything. As you can see, they just fade in and fade out. All of them do something different. So if you want something a bit more different, you can do that, but a lot of them are more designed for titles. So if I wanted some subtitles, all I have to do is take this lower third one, this one called lower third, and then I'm just going to click and drag that into my timeline, just like I would with anything else. And this gets a little complicated. But again, if you ever have any issues or anything like that, you can always contact me or kind of look it up online. But basically, now that that's in there, as you can see, as it's playing,
I'm recording this live
this will
into
show
Zoom, and
up
I'll do my best to leave it
at
unedited.
the parts where the purple
So
line,
about my
when I dragged it in and it showed up that purple line like that. I can increase the length of that by clicking on the right-hand side of that purple line. I can make it go for longer, or I can make it go for a shorter time. And I can even move it around when it's in here. If it's not in the right spot, I can adjust that. And if I want more kind of fidelity, I can always zoom in and get a little more fidelity to be able to pin it right where I want it. And then all I have to do is double click the title that's on here, double click that, and then up in the top right hand corner here with the preview, it will show where I can type. And then I can just type in whatever I want in either of these boxes and then just clean it up or whatever. I can type on here, and then that will update and it'll show up in that spot. So that's how you can add subtitles, because I remember somebody asking that. So the last thing, as far as sharing your video, so getting it out of the software, basically, again, I'll cover a lot of this type of thing on in 2 weeks on Tuesday. All I have to do is, just like on iPhone or anything else, the top right hand corner here, I can click the share button, or I can go up to the top window, I can click file, and I can go to share. And then if I want any of these things, prepare for Facebook, YouTube, email, if I have my email attached to my Mac device, I can do that there. And then image and file is what we want. So obviously we don't want an image. That would just be a still. So I can click file here, and this is what it'll show me. I can scrub it here if I need to do that for some reason. But this should be fairly self-explanatory because they don't give you a whole lot of options. Format, video and audio, audio only, resolution. Basically, the lower the number, the lower the quality. And then this slider of quality can be something to play with. You can try different settings to see what works for you. But in general, I would use it to adjust a file size to something that's useful to me. Until you get down really, really low, super, super low down here, you probably won't notice any difference between a lot of these, depending on what you're using it for. I mean, if you're trying to play it over a big screen TV or in a movie theater, it might make a difference. But in general, on the internet, almost any of these is going to be fine, as long as it sets it to a file size that that's manageable for you. And you can see how that changes on the left-hand side here as I adjust this. You can also click it and select some things to something that works for you. If thinking about the slider, it's too much of a pain, you can always kind of select one of these, and those will change your file size and the quality. But again, on the internet, in general, if what you're doing is like sharing a lesson video or something just for your student to use super quickly, medium and low are going to be just fine, especially because and even a lower quality resolution is going to be fine, especially if you can get it to be a manageable size for you to upload quickly to Dropbox or to Google Drive or to YouTube or anything like that. The lower is going to be better, basically, to try to get those across. Because the lower your file size, the more manageable it's going to be. Okay, so we're kind of at the end here as far as my sort of general orientation before we can kind of go to some questions if anybody has anything specific. The last thing that I'll say is, again, on this right-hand side here, I have some controls, and I'll just go over those really quick, and then we can go to some questions. Pretty much all these are, hang on, we have somebody trying to get into the room. Pretty much all of these are kind of self-explanatory, but this first one is some automatic features and some white balance and stuff like that. So all white balance is if you have a feature on your laptop or on your phone or anything that makes things more red looking or red colored, That's kind of the white balance. So it sort of adjusts the difference between blues and reds. The second one here is highlights. Well, this is probably not the best location to see. But you can adjust the contrast of your video with some of these, play around with them, see what you like. This adjusts the saturation, so basic editing stuff. Like we talked about before, you can crop stuff, but in iMovie, you can't actually crop things like how you might see in Virtual Ensemble, which is why we're doing a different one next week. But you can do basic zooming crops, basically. So if I select the area to crop like this, it'll only show me this in the full screen now. If I go over to sound, this will let me adjust if my video is too loud or too quiet. I can kind of boost or reduce the volume. And then this is some EQ. You can play with these if you like that, but one of the more important ones is just this filter one. You can always clip filter, and you can set different things to get to a point where you like the look. It's not adjusting right now because I already adjusted some stuff back here. Let me just really quick go in the chat. Some people are having to leave, which is fine. And like I said, a lot of this stuff I can get into more detail as far as the kind of end chunks in a couple of weeks. Somebody said that they can never get to export to YouTube or Facebook, and honestly, a lot of those features are just kind of broken. So sometimes they just fail. So it can always be better to just export it as a file. That's kind of why I suggested that. Did anybody who's still kind of hanging around have some specific questions about getting around, still feeling a little nervous? I know I see somebody saying here, can I take audio out, edit in another program, then reinstall the edited audio? Yeah, exactly. You can do that by separating the audio here, and you can just delete the old audio and then drag it in. You can do all that kind of stuff. Anything you can do with video, you can do with audio. Somebody asked how many audio clips can be layered in. Actually, a lot, more than videos. So you can only do 2 videos at a time. You can basically just simply alternate or kind of fade between 2 videos, or blend 2 videos. But you can add almost, I think, at least 6 different audio clips on top of each other. So you can have like a voiceover, as well as some background music, as well as some sound effects, as well as, you know, kind of whatever. But you can only have 2 videos. Somebody asked, I'm wondering specifically if I can layer in up to 4 audio files on top of each other. Yeah, exactly. So you can do, I think, at least, for sure, at least 4. I think you can do up to 6. Cool. So for those of you who are still hanging around, I don't know if you have any other questions, but that is kind of the overview of this. The only difference between mobile for the recording here, just kind of finishing up, the only big difference for mobile with this type of stuff is that you're just limited a bit on certain features. So you can't do certain things like adding titles or adding a lot of different audio files and stuff like that. The desktop version is much more powerful, but you can pretty much do everything with the iMovie file or iMovie on iOS that you can on the desktop. The desktop just gives you more functions.
Thanks, Isaac. I have some more questions. I'll just send you an email directly. So.
Yeah, totally. And I'll add for the recording. This will go up, of course, and out to everybody, but just for the sake of the recording, I'm always available for questions that people have if they can't find them online or anything like that, or if they have something really specific to ask too.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Isaac. That was really helpful, and I'm sure everyone will be contacting you now, so I hope you're ready, but it's a great overview.
Totally, that's the hard part, right? Is you could go on and on and on, and it has a lot of depth to it, but hopefully that'll at least help people kind of get their foot in the door.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much.
Yep.